Assalamu alaikum and good evening. I'm Zahedul Amin. I'm one of the co-founders of Light Castle Partners. So we are a Bangladesh-based consulting and business data firm. So over the last 5 years, we have worked in multiple industries, steel being one of them. And I am here to actually give a primer about Bangladesh. I know many of you are from Bangladesh, but there are many others who haven't been here or who have been here for the first time. And I just wanted to give a particular primer so that they can understand what's going on here. So Bangladesh, as we know, it has been emerging, it has been coming up for a long time. The growth rate has been fantastic, which we will be covering. And we believe that it's the best kept secret in Asia because there is a lot of focus on India, a lot of focus on China. Myanmar has come up recently after their political stabilization, but there has not been much discussion about Bangladesh in itself, which we believe should be done now. So if we look at the Bangladeshi's economic situation, you'll be happy to know that Bangladesh has been performing very well compared to its peers. And since the new millennial, the growth rate has hardly gone below 6%. And as you can see, over the last 5 years, the growth rate has hovered around, average growth rate has hovered around 6.3%. And as you know, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan has portrayed Bangladesh as one of the emerging countries which are going to break the ceiling and come to the next level. And performance, as you can see, apart from probably India, China, and Myanmar, Bangladesh's growth rate has been phenomenal. If you look at the sovereign rating, which has been done by Moody's and S&P, we can actually see that Bangladesh's performance has been very good when you compare to the regional peers. Apart from India, probably, Bangladesh's credit rating, sovereign credit rating, has been one of the best and top-notch compared to the regional peers. If you can actually look into the different sectors, Bangladesh, although it's services-driven, majority of the GDP contribution comes from the services department, service sectors. But in terms of export, there are a number of sectors which have done very well. First of all, that being apparel sector, which is the second highest export generating sector, followed by frozen food, pharmaceutical sectors, which are also there. And as we can see, Bangladesh has done well in terms of foreign currency reserve, and also remittance flow has also been high due to large-scale remittances coming from the Middle East. In terms of the major sectors, I'll just quickly go through it. RMG is one of the major export sectors, with export as of 2016 going up above $30 billion, which is expected, and it constitutes 82% of the country's export. And it's expected that the export will cross $40 billion within 2021, according to McKinsey, a renowned management consulting firm. Pharmaceutical sector is also emerging in a way that the local market is growing, and there is also an increasingly larger niche for generic drugs in the Middle Eastern and the African market, which is getting captured by the pharmaceutical sector as a whole. IT sector, as we have said, is one of the thrust sector from the government. Government is providing a lot of policy support, and as a result, it's expected that it's going to cross $1 billion very soon. So, what are the reasons? Why is Bangladesh emerging as a growth nation? One of the main reasons is the large population. In a country such a small country, the population is around 160 million, and not only that, there is a large middle and affluent class population. According to the BCG's report on middle and affluent class, 7% of the Bangladesh's population are considered to be MSCs, middle and affluent class population, and which is expected to quadruple in the next 10 years, which is going to be phenomenal for companies which are looking at Bangladesh as a market. So what are the facts hindering the growth? As we all know, Bangladesh wants to become a middle-income nation very soon. So what are the bottlenecks which are actually hindering the growth for 7% or 8% growth, which is being experienced by countries like India and China? One of the main reasons is the lack of savings and investments, which is resulting in lower investments within the economy. And although there are a number of problems, as you can see, there are a number of issues that usually come up when a certain investor wants to invest. There are lots of issues, but having said that, the savings investment gap is one of the major problems. And as we know, the FDI flow is not up to the mark, which is actually less than $2 billion. And there is a lot of opportunity for improvement. So to understand, to gauge the perspective of the entrepreneurs or representative of the different sectors, we actually did a business confidence index middle of this year, where we actually collected data or interviewed C-suite members, CEOs and CFOs of different companies representing different sectors, and we collated their views to understand their business optimism level. Our rating came at 39 out of a scale of -100 to +100, which shows that it's moderately optimistic, but there are facts which are sort of hindering the further growth of the sectors. If I might actually give some insights from the business confidence index, as we can see, the respondents, the leaders of the different sectors, they are optimistic about making investment in the sector. They are optimistic about making investment in their sector and other sectors, but the optimism level is very moderate, shown by 51% figure. And in terms of employment generation, the people or the leaders feel that there is a lot of scope for employment generation. As we know, there are 2.2 million people entering the job market or the working class working population every year, and there is a glut of human resource available. So what are the challenges that have been identified by the different stakeholders? One of them has been identified include employee competency. Although there are a number of graduates coming up, but it's one of the major problems. Financial constraint is a problem, interest rate issues. Another part is open-ended regulation, which is also a major problem for most of the emerging countries. And also there is a cost in terms of travels and logistics, which is one of the major core problems where the government is investing. So what are the future drivers? If we look at the future drivers, we can see that power and gas has been identified as one of the key sectors where future investment is going to go. And that's according to the BCI, the Business Confidence Index that we have done middle of this year, and followed by information technology, ready-made garments, which is one of the main stalwarts, and followed by pharmaceutical sectors. So how can we actually achieve the 7 to 8% growth rate as a nation? For that, we need to make structural changes. For example, if you look into that, our coveted middle income status, we actually need to go for economic integration, both at a regional level, at the global level. We need to go for economic sustainability, where the issue of power sector and the others will actually come up. And if you look at the economic integration, we can see that Bangladesh is just located in the middle of two major economic powerhouses, namely India and China, and they have a huge middle class population. And if Bangladeshi companies, secondary sector companies, or secondary and tertiary sector companies can actually target these consumers, these newly enriched consumers with deeper wallet size, we might as well have a good proposition. And investors can actually come in and actually enjoy the fruits, or they can enjoy the favorable government policies that are open to that. Apart from that, Bangladesh has also steered up good relationship with different partners, including India, Japan, and also China. Chinese PM recently came up, and Bangladesh actually got a soft, or I would say, promise for around $22 billion of investments, mostly going to the infrastructure sector, in roads, highways, in railway stations and other places. So how can we actually absorb these investments? Although there is a lot of problems of bureaucratic red tapes that comes up, how can we actually ensure sustainability so that we can actually absorb these investments coming both from the government level and from the private sector level, from the international and the local scenario? So one of the main engines of growth, we believe, is the private sector. And private sector is known to have actually moved the country forward in many ways. And I can see that there are representatives from the private sector who has done a phenomenal job by taking the country forward. There are lots of issues. The core issues that we would want to discuss is power and energy, which was one of the main problems prior to 2009-10, and which is still a problem, but the government is getting into it, and especially due to entry of private sector in building power plants, the situation is going to further improve. And we believe government support is imperative. If you look at the budget allocation for 2016-17, we can actually see that for communication, the government has allocated 10.2% of the country's budget on communication, which is considered to be one of the key hindrances for ensuring growth. Another is the power and energy sector, which we believe is another bottleneck for multiplying or fostering growth. Another physical infrastructure accounts for that. And if you look at the Bangladesh's power demand, we can actually see that demand is growing at an exponential pace, and as we can see, 2040 data, the demand is going to go up many-fold. So there is a lot of opportunities for power companies to actually come up. Lots of opportunities for new sources of powers, maybe from the private sector. It can be in the form of PPP, it can be financed by the government, it can be a G2G project, but there's a lot of opportunities there. And currently this weekend, as has been mentioned by the first speaker, that gas is one of the main inputs for generating electricity. But as we know, we are sort of, our gas reserves are depleting, and as we know, we have 2.3 billion tons of coal available with us for usage. So we believe that coal is probably an answer to the future question of power. As we know, Bangladesh's government has recently published the Power Sector Master Plan, which was published in 2016. According to that, coal will play a major role. It will actually constitute up to 40% of all the inputs that are entering into the power sector as a whole. And as we can see, by entry of LNG terminal, or the floating LNG terminal, which is going to be set up in 2017-18, gas supply is also going to go up a bit, but coal will play a very significant role in the country's future growth stories. Although we acknowledge the fact that coal in itself is a dirty resource in a way that it causes pollution, but given the context of development, we believe that coal is probably one of the answers to our queries to generate more electricity, which will drive out our growth in different sectors, including the steel and power sector. If you look at the coal supply, this is a projection done by the PSMP and JICA. As we can see that the demand for coal is going to increase. Although we have said that 2.5 billion tons of coal reserve is available, but due to problems in extracting coal in a proper manner, and given the large-scale demand for electricity, there is going to be a large demand for coal import. As we know, like, there is only one plant which is currently operating. There are 5 or 6 coming up in the near future, and primarily, initially, it will be driven by import of coal, but following the starting of these coal mines, there will be a replacement of resources, or the domestic sources will partially replace imported coals in general. So, summing up, if we could just find out this can come in terms of strong economic ties with neighboring countries and regional powerhouses. There is a growing working age population which is growing. As we have said, there are 2.2 million people entering the job market, and 60% of the population is below the age of 30. So, and many of them have higher pocket size, which means that they will be able to consume more. There will be more investments in terms of real estate assets and those kind of things, and also favorable government policies, which are going to augur and foster more investments in the country. Having said that, we are strongly bullish about the growth of the country, and for ensuring the growth of the country, we need to ensure that there is adequate power, and for ensuring adequate power, we actually need to ensure that there is availability or facility of importing coals, and also ensure that there are more coal mines which are available to us, or which are developed, which will give us the raw materials for generating electricity, which will help us build a country which will achieve the middle income status. Thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you so much.